Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 46 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Now, a little bit of news was dropped this morning in regards to Super Megaforce. Nothing too substantial as far as the overall plot is concerned, but something that just kind of makes you think in what direction is the series going and what's it going to go ahead and do. And specifically, today we got the name of the Silver Ranger from Super Megaforce, the name of his Zord. Now, of course, in Gokaiger, this is the Gojujin. It is going to be called the Q-Rex Megazord in Power Rangers Super Megaforce. Now, Morphin Legacy got this information from a listing on Amazon for a Mega Block set. And I want to read a brief part of that description here. And it says, quote, "This powerful Megazord was inherited by the Super Megaforce Silver Ranger from the legendary Time Force Quantum Ranger," unquote. Now, looking from that quote directly, it seems that Eric, at some point, is going to give this Q-Rex to Orion, the Silver Ranger. As far as I know, Daniel Southworth has not stated he is going to be in Super Megaforce. So I'm not sure if Eric is even going to go ahead and show up unless he's keeping it a secret and so forth. But it seems rather similar to how it happens in Gokaiger when the three dead Rangers give Guy the Megazord. But that leads into a number of issues that I want to go ahead and discuss here. And they primarily have to do with, again, how I think Super Megaforce is going to handle this and where I'm kind of worried in a number of things. First of all, if Eric doesn't show up, maybe they got him to do a voiceover, or it's just they got a guy in the suit and he doesn't talk, or heaven forbid we get a horrible voice dub. The latter being the most likely in that scenario, of course. But the fact that it's coming from the Quantum Ranger, what does this necessarily mean? Is it actually the Q-Rex modified somehow? Is it a new Q-Rex that's been developed? What is it exactly? Because we do know that the original Q-Rex from Time Force is still around and was still operating in the 21st century. It was, of course, never used after the final episodes, but we know it's still there. So, in terms of story, did Eric have it modified? Did Mr. Collins at Biolabs use his connections to upgrade it somehow? Which I don't necessarily see likely, simply because technology in 21st century is a lot different from the 30th and 31st century. So, I'm not quite sure exactly if that would be the case. Now, the other option is that this is actually from the future, probably sent back by Alex or Jen or somebody from there, to where it's the Q-Rex Mark II. It's a similar concept, dinosaur changes into robot and stuff, but it's made completely new from the future, whatever that future is exactly. I mean, just because the chronology of the series says it's 2014 now, doesn't mean it's going to be 3014 in the future, basically. But is it being sent back in time? And if that's the case, what does Eric have to even do with it at that point? So we bring up a number of these story issues that I would like to see answered within the series. Because if it's not the original Q-Rex, then why has another one been commissioned? And if it is the original Q-Rex, how is it upgraded? And is it even more powerful than before? Because again, we're using 21st century technology in which to enhance it. Possibly it could be alien technology. Who knows what's going on there? And they do have the footage of the Gojujin being sent from the future, so that would seem likely if they're going to utilize their footage. Now, to that point, as far as utilizing their footage, the Gojujin was made up of the powers from Zhu Ranger, Abba Ranger, and Time Ranger. from this description, it seems it's only a Time Ranger, or Time Force based power set. And of course, as you know, when Guy would activate it to do different techs, he put in the Dragon Ranger key, the Time Fire, and Abare Killer keys. So either they're going to somehow put in that, yes, these three powers do activate it, or they're going to do some fancy editing in which we never see the other three keys, which to me just, it doesn't seem right. So it seems like they may be just cutting out everything but the Time Force power set in there and only have this relate to Time Force in some way. But how is it ultimately going to be referenced to Time Force, basically? That's what I want to go ahead and know, and I want to see how the series is going to go ahead and approach it under those terms. Just because it's from the Quantum Ranger, or because it's from the Quantum Ranger, you have to have a story of why it's from the Quantum Ranger. Why is Eric giving this Zord? Because that's another thing we have to go ahead and think about. Again, the Quantum Ranger in Time Ranger, or Time Fire, died. Now, he was obviously resurrected so that he could come back and help out with the legendary war, okay? And, of course, he lost his powers, and we know that whole story there. If they're going to have a similar event in Power Rangers, then what I want to go ahead and see is, what are they doing with the power sets, I guess? Because we know that the Legendary War is happening at the end of Super Megaforce. So, of course, they have to explain where these powers in the keys are coming from, and, of course, how Eric fits into that. Because, of course, Eric and Wes are the only ones from the future who are in present day. And for whatever reason, the other 4 Time Force Rangers will have to come from the future to the past to participate in this battle. And I would like to know what kind of story contrivance they come up with for that. And that's something I'll discuss down the line as far as, the Legendary War and all that. But I guess I'm getting a little off track here because, again, I had just found out about it. I just have this gut reaction that something is not going to gel right. Something's not going to go ahead and mesh to where it is Time Force, but that's all there is. And the reason that they're giving him the Zord is what I'd like to know. Because now I remember what my point is. In Gokaiger, they all lost their powers. Does Eric actually lose his powers at some point prior to where he says, oh, I don't need this Q-Rex, you can go ahead and have it? I guess that would be my thought if it's indeed a modified version of the Q-Rex. That also being said, if it's coming from the future, then why is it just coming from the future? How come the Time Flyers are not coming from the future? How come the Transwarp Megazord or the Time Shell, how come they're not coming from the future? Why is it just this one Zord that is coming back? Now, there are similar questions in Gokaiger because, again, that's full of plot holes there. But in terms of Power Rangers, of those two options, a newly built Zord, which would have to come to the future, from the future, or a modified version of the original, you need to have a good reason for why this is happening, why the Quantum Ranger is giving it to, basically, from what we understand, the character thus far is an inexperienced rookie Ranger. I mean, when was the last time Jason gave a Zord to somebody who was a rookie? And I don't mean the power transfer because that was him giving up his powers and Zordon basically gave him the Zord. But I'm saying you did not see in Forever Red where Jason went to Cole and said, Cole, you're going to need help to win this battle. I'm going to give you the Red Dragon Thunder Zord. One, because the Red Dragon Thunder Zord would have been destroyed at that point. But second of all, that just doesn't make any sense that when you're an active Ranger that you would give up your Zord while you're still active. And even if Eric loses his powers in the first episode, and that's how it manifests as Key, The only way to control the Q-Rex is with the quantum morpher, and only the quantum ranger can do that. And let's also remember that the morphers are DNA bonded, and the quantum morpher is voice activated. So logically, the Q-Rex should not be able to respond to anyone other than Eric. Now, again, that being said, if it's modified, maybe they change that in the remodel, but I wouldn't imagine why they would do it unless Eric gave up being the Quantum Ranger, which also would need some sort of explanation. And again, problematic issues with it coming from the future. So, again, it was just a little bit of information here that we were given. There's a lot you can pull from it. Unfortunately, we're not going to find out till probably about mid-year next year as far as what the story of this Zord is, where does it come from, its function, and of course its relation to the Silver Ranger, because the Silver Ranger is significantly different here from what we can tell in Super Megaforce to what he was in Gokaiger. Guy and Orion are not going to be the same, and that's fairly obvious. I hope I'm kind of wrong, because I'd like to see a Power Ranger fan that's Guy-esque in the series, but that's getting off topic once again, and I apologize because that is something that I tend to do a lot when I ramble. So those are just kind of my quick little thoughts on it. You know, what do you guys think? Is the Q-Rex Megazord, is it in any way actually related to the original Q-Rex, you think? Is it something new, or is Amazon just, full of crap, basically, in this description? So let's ultimately see what happens, but I definitely want to hear your all's opinions in the comments. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.